Hi all, this is Dr. Bowie, and this is going to be a very quick video on writing your introduction for your literature review. So the first thing to mention is that your literature review for this class is a standalone assignment. Keeping that in mind that typically in the world of research, a literature review is part of a much larger body of work, whether it's a larger study or larger review, things like that. But yours is just a standalone literature review. Keeping that in mind that if you're Googling it or even looking on Purdue OWL, as I suggested, being a great resource for you, or you look at some of these exemplars, keeping in mind that if it says something around a study, that's not something you need to include because you're not studying anything. You're just reviewing the literature. So just keep that in mind as we look at some examples of these videos. So the first example is from Hannah, and she reviewed the effects of communication on marital satisfaction. So if we're thinking about the introduction for your literature review, the first thing that you want is an introductory paragraph that just it details what your topic is. And you can see that Hannah did that in this very first paragraph here, and I'll give you a moment to read those three sentences. So you can see Hannah did not say, my research topic is, or I chose to study the first person language within this. You can tell what she decided to review and the hook for it as well. So the hook being today, divorce has been a very common part of life. It's likely that communication is a piece of that. So it's drawing the reader in. Um, Other versions of hooks can be a question that you put there first to pull the reader in. Some way for your reader to start with more about whatever you're reviewing. Um, so that's the first piece is having an introductory paragraph that talks about, okay, here is my um, topic that I am covering. The second part would be your research question. Now, Hannah in this example actually put her research question farther down, but I'm going to scroll down and show you where that is because you would be expected to have it in your introduction for this one. And you can see it right here. RQ, which stands for research question, how do differences in communication styles between married couples married 5 years or less affect marital satisfaction? You don't have to put the RQ. You can just say the research question that drove the review of this literature is, and then you would put your research question. So that would be the second element of your introduction. So you're going to have a introductory paragraph that details what your research topic is. You're going to include what your research question is within that broader topic. And then you're going to do what I call is a roadmap for your reader. So imagine that your introduction is the beginning of a path through the rest of your paper. So it should be very clear to your reader by the time that they are finished reading your introduction, not only what your topic is, not only what your question is, but also what the rest of your paper is going to entail very specifically. So having the second um, paragraph right here, Hannah effectively talks about the research problem that she's addressing, as well as the justification for her research. She very clearly states learning more about this is going to aid in the successful sending and receiving of messages. So the more that we can learn about this, here is the justification for this. So the problem is there's not great communication, and here's how this literature review could justify why I'm justifying that is a good thing to review. If there are any deficiencies in the um, in the literature that you reviewed, you can put it here as well. Um, some people call it the big but um, in research circles, where it's like, well, they've studied this and they studied this, but we don't see this. So if there are deficiencies in the literature that you reviewed, this is the place to put them. So, for example, let's say that you were reviewing um, the effect of after school programs on students' end of year assessment. And the literature that you reviewed as you're looking through it and kind of parsing through all of the different pieces of research, you're noticing that there are no studies that you were able to find that looked at after school clubs that were manned by teachers. How about that? Like maybe all the ones that you were able to find were ones where outside organizations came in and took care of the after school clubs. So there were none where the school teachers were part of it. That could be a deficiency in the research. You can say, well, we're missing this piece right here, and that can be an important thing to note. It could be with the methodologies that you're seeing, all the things that you're learning about in this class, those pieces of it, the sampling sizes, but a bunch of different things that you could look at, or you might not find any deficiencies at all. That's okay too. But the important part is making sure that you're stating your research problem, that there is justification for why you feel like you needed to review it, and then who your intended audience is as well. Is your literature review aimed towards teachers, classroom teachers? Is it aimed more towards administrators? Or what about parents and families at home? Would this literature review be most beneficial for them to read? Make sure you include your intended audience as well. All right, so now the part that gets to the path. The last paragraph of your introduction should very clearly state, and it is perfectly fine to use these exact words, this literature review will discuss. And then you are going to lay out 3 to 4 main topics that are going to come in the body of your paper. I like to call them the big buckets of where your research fell when you're looking thematically across them and synthesizing what were some similar themes around what you read. So you can see Hannah says she will discuss nonverbal communication styles, including flirtation, and conflict communication, including communicated perspective taking. And those become the subheadings of the body of her paper. So if your introduction's last paragraph states this literature will review will discuss A, B, and C, I would expect as I dive into the body of your paper to see A, B, and C very clearly. There is the path, and I'm going to follow it. Hannah's last paragraph here says this study will further advance. Remember, you're not conducting a study. So you could say this literature review will further advance research. So you can, again, mention the intended audience or the justification, the good part of why this literature review was needed, why it's crucial to have this kind of literature review. And then we move into the body of the paper, which you will have another video around that separately. So just to review one more time, your introduction should include an introductory paragraph that details what your research topic is, as well as your research question. And then you should have the elements of like what good writers do when they're looking at the problem statement. So you should have a hook. You should have a research problem. You should have the justifications for the research. You should have deficiencies if you found it. You should have your intended audience mentioned as well. And then that last paragraph is going to be the very clear pathway through the rest of your paper. This literature review will discuss A, B, C, and D, if you've got 4 main topics, whatever they are, and that will guide the body of your paper. So just a couple of paragraphs, shouldn't be long at all. You can see Hannah's here was 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, about 4 paragraphs. Perfectly fine for writing a standalone literature review assignment. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me, pop it onto Blackboard, and we can all help one another. But hopefully with this, as well as your literature review rubric and the description of this assignment, all of those elements will come together to clarify what the expectations are for the introduction to your literature review. Thanks so much.